Brazil, the land of samba, soccer, and the Amazon rainforest, has also been a hotspot for economic ups and downs. Its history is marked by cycles of prosperity, setbacks, and a resilient spirit. From the heady days of the coffee boom to the economic bust of the 1980s and current unstable situation, let's take a journey through the economic roller coaster that is Brazil. Before we start, please support my channel by clicking like and subscribe buttons. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, Brazil experienced a truly golden age, driven by its thriving coffee industry. This period marked Brazil as the world's largest coffee producer, and the country played an essential role in satisfying the world's caffeine cravings. The coffee boom created immense wealth, attracting a wave of immigrants from around the world. People came from places as far-reaching as Italy, Japan, and Lebanon, all seeking opportunities in Brazil's coffee fields. As coffee production soared, Brazil's economy flourished. The revenue from coffee exports was substantial, bolstering the nation's financial stability and contributing to its infrastructure development. Cities like São Paulo and Rio de Janeiro grew rapidly, becoming economic powerhouses and cultural hubs. While the coffee-driven economic boom had its downsides, such as social inequality and labor exploitation, it was an era of tremendous economic growth and transformation. Between 1900 and 1980, Brazil experienced a remarkable period of economic growth, ranking among the world's fastest-growing economies. Per capita income in Brazil surged at a rate that outpaced that of the United States. This era marked a profound transformation in the country's economic landscape. Transitioning from a predominantly rural, agriculture-based economy focused on exporting goods such as coffee and sugar into a thriving urban industrial powerhouse. Following World War II, Brazil's federal government began to plan for economic development and target industrialization and high rates of growth. This was a period of immense optimism, and Brazil seemed like an endless construction site, with highways, buildings, and industries popping up throughout the country. As a symbol of this progress, Brasilia was inaugurated in 1960 as a planned capital city with a modernist architecture. The city's unique design was a symbol of Brazil's modernization and ambition. The construction of Brasilia also necessitated an extensive transportation network, including highways and a new airport, further driving economic development. This ambitious undertaking generated a considerable number of jobs and attracted a highly skilled workforce. However, the hopefulness of the 1950s was swiftly eclipsed by the political upheaval of the early 1960s. Following the military coup in 1964, the country remained under military rule until 1985. This period saw the erosion of Brazilian democracy and a more inclusive development model. Conversely, economic growth made a rapid resurgence, leading to substantial reductions in poverty. During what came to be known as the Brazilian miracle, the real GDP expanded at a remarkable rate of over 8% annually in every year except one, spanning from 1968 to 1976. Remarkably, poverty declined by more than 20 percentage points from 1960 to 1980, despite a concurrent rise in income inequality. However, akin to any economic boom, it was followed by a bust. Throughout the 1970s, the global economic landscape underwent significant transformations, but Brazil struggled to adapt promptly. It heavily relied on foreign debt to prolong the inward-focused industrialization model that had previously yielded decades of success. Regrettably, this strategy met a harsh reckoning in 1982 when a debt crisis swept across Latin America. Brazil had borrowed heavily and engaged in lavish spending. In 1974, the initial signs of the crisis materialized as demand for crucial goods such as automobiles and electrical appliances began to wane. Although the rate of production growth did not decline as sharply, there was a substantial buildup of unsold inventory. In a bid to stimulate sales, the government expanded the availability of loans, but this only exacerbated inflation. The earlier optimism of the miracle years gave way to a period of stagnation and hyperinflation. Between 1981 and 1992, Brazil witnessed negative annual growth in 5 separate years, with annual inflation skyrocketing into the thousands. The situation grew so dire that individuals would occasionally settle their restaurant bills before ordering because they were uncertain about the final cost of their meal. This period is frequently termed a lost decade for Brazil in terms of living standards. However, mounting public discontent compelled the military to cede power in 1985, setting the stage for the creation of a new constitution in 1988. The groundwork for the most recent cycle of growth and optimism was laid between 1994 and 2002. It began with the successful implementation of the Real Plan in 1994, a stabilization plan that ultimately conquered hyperinflation, marking a significant turning point in Brazil's economic history. The Real Plan comprised 3 key phases. Fiscal adjustment. An emergency social fund was established to enhance tax collection and budget flexibility. Introduction of the real unit value. This institutional unit of account, with daily corrections, served during the transition period until the adoption of the new currency. Launch of the Brazilian real. On 1 July 1994, the new Brazilian monetary unit, the Brazilian real, came into effect, representing a major achievement in the battle against inflation. The disinflation process was remarkably swift, with annual inflation dropping from 4,922% in June 1994 to 916% by December 1994. In 1995, the annual inflation rate further decreased to 22%. Subsequently, a series of international and domestic shocks posed challenges to price stability. From 1995 to 2002, under the leadership of President Fernando Henrique Cardoso, a range of significant policies were enacted. These included a modest reform of the public sector social security system, the establishment of an anti-poverty conditional cash transfer program linked to children's school attendance, and the adoption of a pivotal fiscal responsibility law. Cardoso also took steps to implement more sound macroeconomic policies, including allowing the exchange rate to float in 1999 and introducing a system of inflation and fiscal targets. Despite this period characterized by slow growth and global turbulence, inequality started to decline for the first time in at least 3 decades. Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva continued similar macroeconomic policies during his presidency from 2003 to 2010. He reformed the social security system, expanded anti-poverty initiatives, and took advantage of a favorable international environment and a robust commodity boom. This period saw the economy growing at around 4% annually, accompanied by a 1/3 reduction in poverty. It marked the first time in at least 5 decades that Brazil simultaneously experienced economic growth, decreased poverty, and reduced inequality. As living standards improved and poverty decreased, Brazil entered a phase of heightened optimism. The country paid off its debt to the IMF and discovered substantial oil reserves. International rating agencies upgraded Brazil's foreign debt classification from speculative to investment grade, allowing U.S. pension funds to invest in Brazil. Among Brazilian policymakers, the concept of sustainable development became increasingly common. This optimism grew even more when Brazil was chosen to host the 2014 World Cup in 2007 and the 2016 Summer Olympics 2 years later, a remarkable feat considering it occurred amid the global financial crisis. President Lula initially dismissed the crisis. In 2014, the economy ground to a halt, registering zero growth and underwent severe contractions in both 2015 and 2016. Concurrently, the government deficit swelled to over 6% of GDP in 2014 and exceeded 10% in 2015. However, Brazil's envisioned prosperous future remains elusive for 3 significant reasons. First, investments in physical and human capital played a pivotal role in the success stories of China and the East Asian tigers. In contrast, Brazil has consistently fallen short in these crucial areas. Most notably, Brazil missed a golden opportunity during the commodity boom to make substantial investments in infrastructure. Secondly, Brazil's historical struggle with runaway inflation was, to some extent, a result of successive governments avoiding tough policy decisions. During the period of the commodity boom, the government appeared capable of meeting a multitude of demands, from raising the minimum wage and subsidizing domestic business champions to expanding financial aid for the underprivileged, all the while constructing stadiums for international sporting events and reducing debt as a percentage of GDP. Now that the boom years have concluded, a time of reckoning has arrived, often burdening the less fortunate. Lastly, Brazil urgently requires comprehensive institutional reforms to lay the groundwork for a successful 21st century. Among the most challenging reforms is addressing the country's dysfunctional political system. With over 24 parties in Congress, effective governance becomes exceedingly complex. This fragmentation creates an environment conducive to corruption scandals, as was witnessed in 2005 with the bribery scheme in Congress. This political and institutional environment contributes to mismanagement and corruption across all levels of government. Brazil displays promising signs of growth in 2023, yet the duration of this growth remains uncertain. That's it for today. Thanks for your time. Please do not forget to support my channel by clicking like and subscribe buttons.